The goal is to make something surprising, fun, engaging, mysterious, and like I said before, above all, entertaining. Also, when I was a full-time critic, I watched a lot of mediocre television, and I didn't want to be boring.
So thank you so much, Andy, for having the time to talk to us. And first of all, I wanted to ask you, because, you know, we have like a comeback of whodunits and murder mysteries. What do you think that people find so appealing about this genre?
I think that detective stories are in some ways the perfect story because you have, in a detective character, you have the rare figure who can move through all layers of society, from the very bottom on the street to the very highest levels of executive power, and question everybody along the way. And the other thing that's so wonderful about murder mysteries, detective stories, is that audiences feel very comfortable with them. They understand the idea of a crime. They understand the idea of an investigation. They understand the movement towards some sort of resolution and justice. And when you have that scaffolding, that architecture, what you do along the way is entirely up to you. And that's when you can have zoo animals or whatever else you might want to have.
Completely. And well, actually, about talking, you know, the tone of Briarpatch is really particular, and you actually managed to combine so many elements. You know, there's first of all, it's a story of a woman. Now you have the murder mystery, you have this tone that combines drama and comedy in an aspect. So how did you manage to put all those elements together?
I thank you. I think that for me, it's a couple of things. One is I'm not interested in stories that don't have humor. I don't recognize them as true to life. I don't think you can understand dark without having some light. And so playing in the space between them is the only thing that interests me, whether I'm writing or whether I'm watching. I also think that you know, TV is unique from movies. TV comes into our homes. TV is a much more intimate relationship. And I do believe that we have an obligation to entertain. You know, people have a lot of choices right now. So I never want people to feel bored or not taken care of in the experience of watching. To your other question, I felt like we had seen many times the story of a stoic or troubled man returning to his hometown to sort out his past or deal with his demons. And I felt like we had not had many opportunities to see a woman do that sort of story, which is why I changed the gender of the main character in the book. It's Benjamin Dill. Also, a relationship that I felt like I had not seen explored through that lens was a relationship between sisters. And I'm an only child, and for everything that means, but I have two daughters, and they were young when I had the opportunity to write the show, but every day was a learning experience of watching that dynamic. And so I was really fascinated and really inspired by that.
And, you know, as a showrunner, you have to make a lot of decisions.
Yes.
How are you in that aspect? Because I know it's very difficult to have, you know, probably the last word on some aspects, and, you know, making these choices and, you know, yeah, we're going to do this. So is this something you feel comfortable with or not so much?
It's a great question, and it was something I had to learn to be comfortable with. I think that my experience is so unique because I worked on the other side of the ball for so many years. I hope I was able to enter into this job with a lot of humility. I was very comfortable telling people I don't know. I was very comfortable with people telling me, with their experience, with their perspective, what they were thinking or what they were able to bring to it. And truly the joy of it is the collaboration and letting other people come in and play in the sandbox that maybe you created. Yeah. I think that the most important thing on top of that, though, is everyone involved in the project has to know that someone is making a decision at the end of it, that there is one aesthetic point of view that is going to be consistent. And so you were correct to say that the job of showrunner, more than anything else, is the job of decision maker. And one thing that is consistent from my life as a critic to my life as a showrunner is I have very strong opinions. So that part felt very comfortable. At a certain point in this process, I just knew what was Briarpatch and what wasn't. And hopefully that steered us to where we needed to be.
And you kind of answered my next question, but what have you learned from all of this?
I learned so much about what I didn't know and continued not to know. Honestly, it was the greatest education of my professional life, which was, to have this incredibly unique opportunity to be, I would say I was drop kicked into the deepest part of the ocean, and then someone told me to swim back. I went from shooting the pilot of this show the year before we shot the series was my first time on set. And a year later, when we were in Albuquerque for 5 months, I was the only producer on set, making all the decisions, which was perhaps foolhardy, but also an incredible opportunity. So really what I learned was a reinforcing of things I already knew. The enormous talent of everyone who works on a production, from actors to gaffers to the catering. I mean, everyone is an expert in something that I don't know anything about. And the goal is to be firm in your opinions, but loose in your collaboration and letting people in. And I learned a lot about that. I think I also learned, the other biggest lesson I learned is to pay very close attention to the budget. So when you start writing giant militaristic war campaigns, remember that you're on basic cable and you might not be able to do that.
And while talking about, you're also a TV critic, as we talked earlier, what could you actually put on use from being a TV critic? Like, I don't want to do this. I want to do this. I mean, maybe taking references from other TV shows and you're like, I'm going to go this way. I don't know. How did you manage to do that?
Absolutely. I think that the value that I've had in other people's writing rooms, when I've been in other people's writers' rooms, is the 10,000-foot view. I think that when you are in the weeds of breaking a story, you can only see what's right in front of you. And being able to take a few steps back, or even 100 steps back, and see the larger picture, not just what this decision might mean for a character, but what this decision might mean for a season, what this decision might mean for how the audience will likely receive it, what this decision might mean for how critics will interpret it, and how it will fuel conversation. I think taking that view was useful ultimately, because I think I had a firm idea of what I wanted to see because I hadn't seen it. Also, I when I was a full-time critic, I watched a lot of mediocre television, and I didn't want to be boring.
Right, of course. And finally, to wrap up, I actually have been listening to your podcast. I love it, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. What can you tell me about a show that you have watched that you loved, recently? You were like, I love this one.
The show that this year that I've loved more than any other was Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Amazon. I'm not sure if that's made it. I assume it's everywhere in the world. I'm not sure, but
I've seen it,
What I loved about that show was it's so hard to make anything right now. It's so challenging, not just because of the economic situation in Hollywood, but also to please all the different masters that you have to. And I just thought that show took things that are now the currency of the land, like a pre-existing IP, big stars, Amazon's need to launch around the world with a big budget, but somehow used that as like a Trojan horse for a much more intimate, much more interesting, much more surprising and emotional story about people. And I think that calculus is kind of the key these days to getting something good on the air. These companies are giving you the money to make it, so you have to try to perform to their expectations, but the goal is always, or should always be, to show us something interesting about ourselves.
That's perfect. I loved it too, actually. So finally, now last question. Why should we watch Briarpatch?
Oh gosh, I think that's the toughest one. I think the goal was to make something. The goal was to make something surprising, fun, engaging, mysterious, and like I said before, above all, entertaining. I wanted to tell a story that would leave everything out on the field. So I think it's important, especially with limited economy. We told the whole story. There are no cliffhangers. There's nothing you have to worry about. It is a good investment of your time. You will get resolution, but you will have hopefully a very, very fun ride along the way.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andy, for your time. And we'll hope to see you in another junket.
I hope so too. What a pleasure. Take care.